But really, this is all about you guys and giving you guys time to ask questions. So that's the goal here is you can ask anything you want about the PhD and I'll do my best to answer it. I have not lived a million lives, so I don't have a million experiences, but I have mine and all my friends and then all the people that I help as well. So with anything that I do, I want you to take this with a grain of salt. I want you to be critical and think like, hey, how does this relate to me? How am I, going to use this information or execute on it? Or what other thoughts do I have in that vein, right? There's no one size fits all. There's also no one right way to do something, right? That is a function of white supremacy culture where we are kind of basically force fed this idea that there's one correct way to do something. And if it doesn't work for us, we are somehow wrong. And I am going against that notion. So please speak up and ask questions if you don't understand something. We can dive in deeper. All right. I see a first question from, and also please correct me on pronunciation. I will do my best, but Nikhil had a question. So I can move you over. Promote to panelists if you'd like to have a chat. We will, and if you don't want to be on camera, that's totally fine. You can put things in the Q&A as well. All are good options.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's up?
Hi there. I just finished my master's and I'm planning on PhD.
Okay.
So I'm an international student though, so I'm just finding resources and stuff. So I just came across you on Instagram.
Sure.
So I just want to know how things work for international students for PhD program.
Okay, so where are you doing your master's?
Oh, I finished my master's.
From where?
University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Okay. So you're familiar with the U.S. university system. So tell me, so you're like, how is it for PhD? What's your actual question there?
I just want to know, like, so for a typical master's, I just had an SOP, letters of recommendation from 3 of my undergrad professors and my undergrad certificates and stuff. And also, CGPA, GPS and stuff. And apart from that, they also interviewed me for my program. It's a biotech.
Sweet. Awesome.
And I went through that, and that's where I am.
Okay.
But
So
I also, as an international student, I also have IELTS and GRE. I don't know if they're going to still consider those both again, since I'm an international student.
Did you say the GRE and the TOEFL, or what was the other one?
GRE and IELTS.
IELTS. So that's the thing where what's that called? Where they review basically your transcripts.
Yes.
And I use a different one, WES or something. Anywho.
Yes, WES. That's like converting all of your grades, CGPA, to common one.
Okay. So your main question, I'll paraphrase, and you correct me where I'm wrong, is like, hey, I already applied to my master's. How different is this PhD application going to be? Is that your question?
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's what it is.
Cool. Well, I can speak to that a little bit. So, I mean, it's similar, right? Like master's was a little bit more intense than undergrad, and PhD is going to be a little bit more intense than that. The main thing with the PhD, which I think is a little bit, like a hyped up version of a master's in a way, is like, it's important that you have, here's my distinction. From like a master's, it's largely like, here, do this thing. And a PhD, it's largely like, what do you want to do? It's a slight distinction that way. And if you approach it like a master's, where you kind of come like expecting somebody to hand you something, and or even in the application phase, like, hey, I've got good grades, like, why don't they just pick me? You're much more in the driver's seat on the PhD, and you're pitching yourself and you're pitching your ideas and what you want to work on. So having a clearer idea of that beyond just like the department name. In fact, I basically work with so many people who we don't really care about the department name unless it's critical to their path. Like some people want to be clinicians in psychology, right? Like you have to have that particular degree. But so that's a main thing of like really honing in on what you want to do, how you want to do it, understanding the research area more than just like applying to a department. Like in undergrad or even master's, everybody has a biotech department. Like not everybody has somebody who's doing, sweet potato GMO modification and drought tolerance to be grown on the moon, right? Like there's like that doesn't happen everywhere. So there's that. But the application, you hit most of the parts, right? It's the SOP, it's your resume, it's different essays as well that might ask for a writing sample or something. And then you're gonna have, like you talked about, your transcripts and things. The main other piece that is, I think, really critical is the networking. So it's not required, but it definitely gives people an edge if they're able to connect with faculty and students ahead of time, because, right, we all know this, if they've got 100 names in a pile, like why is your name going to stick out, right? So that's really, really important, I would say. And that happens through the whole process. It can happen like starting today. Literally, I had people starting to send emails today. And then it also happens in the formal interview phase after you've submitted your applications, and you do that as well. So did that help at all?
Yes, that helps. So did you work with any of international students previously?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And this comes up too a lot, is like some people, and I'm not going to like fight you on the competitive nature. If it's interesting, if you look at the data, the number of international PhDs in the US, like as a percentage, is increasing. I think it's around like 30%, which is pretty big considering, like, from like the domestic standpoint of trying to fund. Anyway, so it's definitely increasing. And the other thing about funding that I think a lot of international students worry about is like they're going to be ineligible. And I would say that that's true from like certain grants, like from the Department of Defense or things like that. But most of the funding coming from the university does not matter if you're international or domestic, right? Like I got paid the exact same that like my lab mate got paid, even though, because we were coming from the university money. And that's always the easiest pot to go for versus like an external fellowship with the Department of Defense or something, because, right, you've got the whole nation applying for that money versus, the 100 people who are applying at that department for that money. So that's the easier route, and you're not at a disadvantage there. Again, as long as they like you, they like what you're pitching, they think that you're the right person to do that. So that's the key.
Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. All right, let me move you back. Okay. So now I see a lot of things in the Q&A. I will go through those a bit, and then I'll swap back to anybody who has their hand raised. A question in the Q&A: how much PhD admissions are similar to and different from master's? Okay, we just covered that one about master's versus PhD. Another question: I would like to know the process in negotiating funding for the PhD stipend to include housing allowance for cross-country travel and finding a place to stay at Cornell. That's so fun. I can, if you want to have a chat, you can raise your hand and we can like go back and forth on this, but I'll give some broad thoughts here and you can speak up if I miss something. Okay, so negotiating a stipend. It's really interesting because when I was at Cornell, the PhD is so interesting because it's so hyper local. Like you're not applying to Cornell, you're applying to that department, right? And they have their own policies and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, they're governed by Cornell, but each department really has, it's almost like, 18 different CEOs working under like one big company, right? Sorry, I digress. But when I was there, actually, the students were kind of, because they were understanding that this can be an exorbitant cost or a fee to move across country or things, and certain people from different backgrounds like don't always have that cash on hand, right? And so they were actually working to provide those funds. So that's something you can definitely ask about. It's a thing where I don't know where they are on this today, right? Like I graduated there a few years ago, but it's a thing where you can definitely have those conversations, and they may have funds available for that. It's not something that's going to change your like stipend amount. So the stipend amount that they're giving you, that comes from up above. That comes from like the CEO, right? And so the university decides what the stipend rate is. They, get it approved by the board and all these things, and then they can offer it to people when they have the budget. And you don't really want them to be like, Natalie will give this much and Beth will give that much, right? Like, you don't really want that. It's not going to be great when you're sitting with your lab mate and being like, oh, you got, an extra 4,000 than me. So they don't do that typically. That's why I'm saying, like, you can ask about these particular one-off allowances and like just kind of talk about your instance. But if you're thinking like, so for me, I had multiple offers. So I was like, school A is going to pay me this, school B, like, what can you do? And school B was like, can't do anything. Like, do what you want with that. And you also have to consider, cost of living in different schools and things. So like, while one offer might be an extra 10 grand, if it's in a very high cost of living area, like it kind of washes out. So I can talk more about that if you have specific things. As far as finding a place to stay, typically people do that from online. Like, I had to find a place to live before moving there. If you don't want to do that, then yeah, you can pay for a hotel or whatever before you get there, but it's more economical to find a place to live before you get there, typically, if you can. If you're in a situation where, like, those cards are not lining up, you can ask maybe if there is somebody you can stay with, like another grad student or something who would be willing to host you for like a week or so. Right. And then there's also like the Airbnb and all those, there's tons of message boards, like, just tons of message boards. Like, people are always looking for people to lease for a month or this or that. So you got options. Okay, more questions. Someone says, I've been out of academia since January 2021. You're saying that like it's like 15 years ago. I love that. Okay, so I'm wondering how to fit my professional experience, which is HR, in my application. Amazing. You people who have professional experience, that is a great thing to have on your resume. It's not like, oh, where do I like shove this? It's like, this is a big piece of what makes you valuable to getting into these PhD programs, because like, right, here's the thing is like, there's people who come right from undergrad, there's people who've been working for 10 years and they're equally valuable. It's just like marketing them differently. And so bringing in your professional experience, which is HR, as long as you're staying in that field, like if you're not trying to like pivot to like history or like chemistry, like that makes perfect sense. You want to talk about the things that they're looking for in a PhD student is the ability to think and act independently. You are not going to be given the answers. You're not even going to be given most of the clues, right? So you have to figure things out for yourself. And if you can talk about that from your professional experience and give concrete examples, that's going to be a huge boost for your application. Also, if you can talk about things that you've produced, like deliverables, reports, documents, right? Because that's also what you do in your PhD is you're producing things, written materials, reports, documents, presentations. So I think a lot of the things you do professionally very much carry over here. Just, you have to feel like the things that you did mattered, right? And also understand that while typically, right, if you're like me, you were in like an entry-level position, like we were not, saving the world, but we were still doing things that mattered. And we were still creating things with a group of people, right? We were not like doing it solo. That mattered. So I think if you talk about the bigger things that you helped create versus like, I filled that report or like I ran that report every Monday, then you are going to have more to talk about in a more compelling way. But yeah, you can always ask more questions. Yeah. Okay, great. I did both my bachelor's and master's in different interdisciplinary fields. How to proceed in finding programs, as PhDs are usually so specific. I love this. All my people, not all, okay, 95% of my people are super multi-passionate and, you know, have a little bit of that like angst of like, where do I fit? Like, where do I take my expertise, my experience, and what I want to do and like actually find a program that does that? So again, like we talked about, as long as the department name is not uber critical to you, like, you know, say you want to be a clinician or you want to go on to like practice law, or, you know, as long as it's not uber critical to you, if you're just like, hey, if I get this, you know, this degree in this ballpark with these skills that I'm going to gain, I will be valuable. I will create the life and career that I want, then I wouldn't truly worry about it. The thing that is my personal philosophy is way more about fit than it is about name. And I'll give you some examples. So when I did my PhD, right, I had an advisor who also advised, this is funny, also advised somebody who was like not in my department, like multiple people. Like he had, I think maybe a joint appointment or like a reciprocity thing with this other department. And so basically there's a girl like sitting right next to me who's like doing almost the same work as me. Like, you know, we had different projects and stuff, but technically getting a different degree. So what I'm really wanting to hopefully open up your mind a little bit to think about is that, and this is just my philosophy, is like getting in the door. Once I get in that door, I can do a lot. And you're not going to be constrained to the department at all. So like, it's really the sky the limit. It's really, you know, what can you accomplish? Who can you seek out? What, you know, collaborations can you make happen? And again, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not just going to like show up and be like, well, I don't want to do that at all. I'm going to like completely do this thing, right? Like it's a progression, but like as a PhD, you are given so much more autonomy and freedom than a master's student or obviously an undergrad. So they expect you to seek things out. So as long as you're finding that that person that you're going to be working with is open to that and or has some experience in the space that you want to be and is open to, you know, a new thrust or a slightly different slant, then you're in business. Like, so then it's just the same age-old problem that everybody has is like, how do I find those people? How do I find that work being done so that way I can align with them? And that's, I think, the main question of, you know, where you're at. But yeah, happy to talk more on that if I diverged. Next question. I'm sorry. If anybody has if anyone wants to have a chat, you can raise your hand and I can, because I know some things get lost in text here. So, but I'll just keep reading these questions if nobody raises their hand. But if you do want to raise your hand, I'm here for that too. Oh, I see somebody. Beth. Oh, there's a couple. That's fun. Okay, cool. This is fun. All right, Beth, moving you over. Hello. Hey, Beth, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes. What's up?
Okay. A lot of things happened as I hit the be a panelist.
I know, man. It's like bing, bing, bing.
So I was trying to type it out, but definitely easier to just ask. So in looking at the program, you know, one of the things you talk about a lot is, you know, your support system, all of those things. And, you know, in trying to make the decision, and I definitely know that I want a PhD. I definitely know that I'm ready. I know kind of the field, the direction. But more or less, right, it's the finances are the biggest piece that it comes down to, right? So I have a pretty decent job right now with a nice salary. And I love my job. I want to stay with the company, you know, like all those things. And I know there's a lot of upward movement.
Awesome.
And we also, you know, want to look to move into a house sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So it's kind of trying to figure out like what the pros and cons are, I guess,
Yeah.
of a pay cut for a fully funded PhD or trying to
Totally.
do a PhD and keep the current job and like what all of
Totally.
that looks like.
Totally. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Here's another one of my philosophies is like, we don't do this in a vacuum. We all have lives, families, friends, other commitments. And so like, yeah, you got to kind of think that through. Okay, here I'll start with like the main topics that I see. So Yeah, when you are working full time, typically if you were to do a fully funded full-time PhD, you would do that full time. You would still probably have some part-time or side gigs, whatever. That's not a problem. But yeah, you probably wouldn't be working your like corporate, high-powered job. Probably not. And so here's like the pros and cons, and they kind of vary by person to person. But when you do your PhD full time, you have a lot more space and energy to actually get into it and like create, right? It is a really creative endeavor. It is a difficult endeavor. Like it's not like a walk in the park, but there's a lot of space and time to do that. And then the con, right, is you don't have your big salary. So the typical stipend, I don't know your exact department, but it can be anywhere from like $25,000 to $45,000 a year. And I know that most working professionals make well above that. So that's something to consider. There always has to be that return on investment calculation for you. Like, okay, we'll just throw out some numbers. If you're making $80,000 today, obviously let's just avoid raises. Clearly, we're all going to get raises, and you would get a raise no matter what path you were on. But let's pretend, keep the numbers round. If you were doing 80, and then let's say your stipend was 40, so you would take a half pay cut for those 4 years. So that's 40 times 4. That's $160,000. Like that is not nothing. The alternative you need to understand is when you come out, are you going to make more money? Are you going to have more options for yourself? And then, so say my salary when I come out is $120K. And I know you would have got pay bumps along the way, but let's pretend that you're also going to get pay bumps with these 120, whatever, just round numbers, right? So like how many years does it take to then, because now you're making an extra $40K a year to make back that $40K a year that you lost, right? It takes 4 years, right? And so you have to do that kind of math of like, okay, and then once you hit that break even point, I'm making an extra $40K every year for the next 30 years. That's 4 times 3, 12, so 1.2 million. So whatever, like, and it's not all about money. It's not. But I do still understand that like whatever happens in 20 years, like you still got bills to pay today. So there's that. And like, this is the same conundrum would happen if you're going to med school or law school. It's like, you got to know, like, is the juice worth the squeeze to you? And it's a function of money and also what you want to do. Like, if you love your job, like, I don't really know if you need the PhD, right? Like that's amazing. Like, not a lot of people love their job. So the alternative for you would be to do like a part-time online type PhD thing, and just do that. Like, and then you're going to pay for it. So then you have to do the math this way. Okay, I'm making $80K a year, but now I'm going to be spending $20K a year for my tuition. But hey, that's still 60 instead of 40, right? These are round, big numbers. But like, that's the math we're doing. And like, there's no perfect math. It's never going to be like, it's never going to be
It's
the
really
best.
very, very, very helpful. So
yeah.
the follow-up there then is, with this program, right? I've done all research, and so far this program is the most clear, concise, straight to the point, and doesn't seem to be bullshitting for discussion's sake here. So from there, my next question is, with this program, is it beneficial only if you're looking at that fully funded, or is it still really good and really helpful, like if you're looking into other PhD options, right?
Oh, sorry, you're talking about my program. I was like, what program are you applying to? No, okay.
Yeah, no. You're because like I did both of my masters online. I work remote. Like I'm very used to keeping a very regimented schedule. Like that's something I'm very, very comfortable and accustomed to.
Okay.
And so is the program also really helpful? And am I still eligible if that's the direction I'm looking, and not necessarily like a fully funded full-time PhD program?
Cool. Okay. So I run a program, a fearless grad program. If y'all don't know, I'll give you links and stuff later. But so basically I work with people to help them do the whole application process from start to finish. We go through, everything we talked about here: statement of purpose, resume, finding programs, understanding your research thrust, interviewing, networking with faculty. It's the whole thing. And so it is really beneficial, even if you're not going for that full-time thing, because even if you right? They still have to want to take you. So here's the crux. With like a master's and stuff, the part-time online is a little bit different, but like they're okay taking people because like, they're getting a large fee. From a PhD perspective, that person is investing a lot of time and energy into you to guide you and to mentor you a lot more than they do a master's typically. So just because like you have the money in your pocket to pay doesn't mean that you're also going to be admitted, because again, it's a energy thing for them of like capacity, right? They can only do 10 people or whatnot. And I have worked with people who, they're kind of landlocked, or they didn't want to move, or they liked their job and they didn't want to go full time, and they still really, really took a lot of benefit out of it. I had one woman who we went around and around with her doing like speech pathology and education, and she ended up getting accepted to a fully funded education, but then taking the like part-time online speech pathology because it just worked with her schedule better and what she wanted to do. Yes. So it's very beneficial if you want, to do this in a more streamlined, fast, and, high caliber kind of way, if that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll probably have more questions later, but someone else can take it.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll move you. Okay, Rachel. I'm going with the hands for a little bit and then I'll bop back over there. Oops. Rachel. Hello. Hey, Rachel.
Hi.
How's it
How are
going?
you?
Good. What's up?
It's going good. I'm the one that asked the question, like, I've been out of academia for so long.
I love that. I'm like, okay, yeah, tell me more.
But I'm really concerned because like I too have done like a lot of interdisciplinary work, and I'm just wondering like how do I then write my purpose statement to make sense, because I still love literature, but looking at the writing at the wall, literature isn't that popular as much, and it's also some areas are kind of divesting into cultural studies, which I also did. So like I'm trying to figure out, okay, now where can I land within a program that, um, well, and with this HR experience, which is kind of different but similar, like where can I land in a program where when I get the benefit of the PhD, which is the money aspect, but I'm not just like doing a passion and coming out like struggling. Like I know we all love Toni Morrison and brilliant person, but Toni may not pay my bills. So
Yeah.
those are my concerns.
Yeah. That's valid. And that's so valid. And I have so many thoughts, and like they're just not all right. Like all my thoughts are, I have similar conflicting thoughts of like, for like, 'cause you guys have all challenged a lot of my thoughts too. I've been getting so many more people who really see like the PhD as more like an entrepreneurial like slant. They're like, I want to be that author. I want to be that speaker. I want to own my own company, and I want these letters by my name to do it. So like there's that aspect, which like it's kind of on you a little bit to make the PhD is a tool, and like how you use it to create your next thing, right? There's so many paths to do that. I think where people get in trouble, or at least a lot of this like narrative out there, like, oh, you'll have your, degree and be like working at Starbucks. I think a lot of that comes from this thought that like the degree is the only thing that matters. Like once I have this magical degree, I'll get this 6-figure job or whatnot. And I just don't think it works that way. And I think we have to be more honest with our people of like, it's a tool. It definitely sets you apart, but it doesn't like, jobs are not going to be falling in your lap, and, no one's going to be like banging down your door, like, write this book for me. sorry, that was okay. That's my soapbox. But the other thing about like, how do you end up in a PhD that's funded and also hopefully giving you a lucrative career down the road? You know, that's has to be from like the homework perspective. Like then you talk to the admins and say, hey, what are alumni doing? Like, where are they? You know, how long does it typically take them to get a job? You know, that kind of thing. If you're getting answers that are not sitting well with you, then like it might just not be the best spot for you. Hold on, my phone's binging. Did that help at all? What other questions do you have?
That helped a lot. I don't really have any more questions. It's just about the reframe, and I get the conflict because, like, you know, I understand there's something kind of scary about sounding like a entrepreneur bro, but at some point you got to pay bills. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can be, and I wouldn't even, it's so interesting because I wouldn't throw it in that light of like entrepreneur bro. I would throw it in the light of like a creative. Like these people, and it's so interesting because I never put myself in that light because I'm like an engineer, you know, nerd. But like the more I really understand A, what my PhD was, and B, who I am and what I do with it now is like I constantly create. And like my canvas is so lame, but my canvas changes, right? It goes from tech to this business. It's going to go to my next thing. Like, and I just think that if you can kind of tap into that energy and those like words, I think you're going to be speaking their language because they're not looking for somebody to come in and do the same thing that's always been done, because that's just not what it's about. So if you can kind of bring your own ideas to life, I think that'll be really, really powerful.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, I'll move you over. Okay, I'm going to do one more question that way, and then I'll bop that way to that hand. Are in the USA PhD programs that you get recruited for, not applying through graduate programs? Where are best resources to look for them? I am not uber familiar with getting recruited to do my PhD. I did get recruited to do my master's. Recruited to do my PhD. That happened. I don't know too much about that process. From what I would venture, from what I understood from my master's, it's mostly like a word of mouth thing, like networking, or like so-and-so, you worked in so-and-so's lab and they thought you'd be a good fit over here, but I don't know too much about that process. I see. Okay, hold on. Well, I see your question over here, and then I'm going to move you over here, Puneeth, and you correct me if I am mispronouncing your name.
Hey,
Hey, how's it
Natalie.
going? Hey.
I'm good. My English is kind of bad, so kind of tolerate with me.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, so I'm an international student from India, and right now I'm doing my master's in like Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. I mean, it's not like a very big public university, but it's like a normal one.
Mhm.
So right now, I kind of have a conference paper and a journal paper, and my second conference paper is on the way. But looking at the other people's profiles, I was like, I mean, my background is in electrical engineering, by the way. So I'm not really sure if I can really get into the good universities, like, you know, with what I did until now. So I just want to know like what your thoughts are or what you have seen until now, like how people are doing or did do.
What's a good university to you?
So maybe something like University of Texas, Austin, or Virginia Tech, Penn State. Yeah.
Okay, so this is fun. When I first started this business, like, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Anyway, so one of my very first cycles, there was an electrical engineer student. I don't think he even had his master's at that point, in India. And this was like pandemic time. So he couldn't go do a master's or whatever. Anyway, it was, the pandemic. And Yeah, so I worked with him and he ended up getting into Virginia Tech and he was so excited. And the main thing that really kind of blew his mind was like, it's all about fit. I think and I think there are just cultural differences. Like that's just the truth of the matter. Is like I know Europe approaches PhD different than the US and India, right? These are cultural differences. So I'll try to speak to them in generalities, but they're not hard, fast rules. But I think in the US, we're not as like it's odd. We're not as number focused, meaning like the GPA, the rank, like those are nice to haves, but they're not as important as like the whole package and the fit and the networking with people and connecting. So I would say you're in a great position. Like you are in a master's program right now, so you have lots of room to network and get to know people and yeah, talk to people at Virginia Tech before you apply there and all that stuff. So I think you are in a great position. I just don't think commenting on people's like exact has to be 3.7. Like, I just don't think that that's true. And I don't think that that would like serve you to talk that way.
Because like so this is the last question. So because like so I have seen other students, graduate students from some good universities, like so I have seen the graduate students from MITs and stuff like that, and they're kind of doing like pretty good for a graduate. Like I'm not even near them as a graduate student, so I wasn't sure like how am I even doing, and can I even try for those universities like per se, so if I really want to go to the
Why do you think you're not doing good right now?
I mean, I'm just looking at them and they have a lot of stuff. They're doing it, and I'm like, they have more publications and they have kind of more journal papers and stuff. So I mean, I'm kind of stuck in this dilemma. So that's why I'm asking you the question. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, of course, more is always better, but from like the PhD perspective, the bar is not to have a PhD in order to get in, right? Like, so the bar for all of you to basically graduate with a PhD is about 3 to 4 papers. So if that were the bar to get in, that would be a very high bar. So I say that to just kind of like, take some tension away from all this like compare and contrast we do, which is totally natural. But yeah, I don't think like, I think it's a diminishing return. I think once you have one publication on your resume, it shows that you know how to do it. And that's really critical because they're like, hey, this person already has some experience. Like they'll probably be, quick study and get up and running faster. And like that speaks well for you versus like, oh my God, this person has 5 papers. Like they must be 5 times better. Like it doesn't really work that way. It just doesn't. But again, it's so dependent on the whole applicant versus like just these small indicators. But yeah, I think you're a great candidate if you market yourself well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Good deal. Oops. Okay, moving back. Over here. Are PhD candidates able to simultaneously go after a second degree if they can make the case to tie into the second degree in their dissertation, i.e. a technology policy master's or an MBA? Totally. Yeah, yes. And a lot of schools are kind of doing that now. They're like kind of doing these hybrid things. Yes, the answer is yes. The other answer is it's not always required. Like I actually took a few classes in the MBA program, but I didn't get an MBA. So there's also that. And there's also like such other things you get to, the university is like, I mean, we know they have a lot there, but I think we also forget that like, because we get so zoned in on our little area, but they have like entrepreneurial programs, ecosystems, like there's just so much to plug into, and like whether or not you need a degree to do it, who knows? But the answer is yes. The answer if it's really important to you to get this extra degree or whatnot, talk to the admins before you apply because, they'll give you a good idea if it's possible or not. Here's the other thing. There's probably a lot more possible than even those admins will like admit, because a lot gets done on a case-by-case basis. But I still think they're your best first step to understand kind of what's normal, where you're looking to be. Hope that helped. Can always talk more on that. Okay, so there's a long question here. I'm currently in a coursework-based master's, trying to switch to my research-based one for an easier route to PhD. My first question is, for someone without much research experience during undergrad, how do I approach the professors? How can one convince the professor and also ourselves, totally, that we have some transferable skills? Second, how can we narrow down our research interests since there are so many interesting things going on across diverse fields? Could you maybe share a few checklist-like questions that might help? And one last question, what transferable skills can we work on until hopefully we get a supervisor that might help us have a smoother transition? Oh, okay. Okay, I think this is a really good one. And I think it's like a super common place to be, because a lot of us leave undergrad not having done research because we didn't know about it, right? Like we didn't know that was a thing we wanted to do. Totally normal. From a research, if like, I am assuming it's an on-campus thing, I think the easiest way is to network. Like, have to ask the professors, you have to talk to them, you have to like ask them what's going on, what work they need, like how can you get involved. Like, I don't think you need to convince anybody. I think it's the bar is pretty low here, and I don't want to like discount people who are doing this, but I'm saying like they're not expecting you to come in and be like this amazing researcher like on day one. They're like, the bar is, hey, extra set of hands that the person can learn to do something. And they're like, you know, a hard worker, and like they're going to be consistent and that kind of thing. Honestly, that's way more important, because I've supervised so many people like in research and things, and like my bar is like, are they going to show up every day? Like, I'm not kidding you, but like people get busy, especially on campus. They're like, you know, they've got their own projects, their own coursework that they want to focus on. Like, that's really critical. And then, you know, the ability to work hard and learn. Like, my expectation is that you do not know how to do this coming in. Otherwise, like, you would have already done it already. So I think the expressing the willingness is really, really key. And, you know, the ability to follow through, and that you like, you know, are very excited about it. Like, I think that will come through. And then, okay, so if that doesn't happen, you're like, what else transferable skills can I work on? Get a job in your field or volunteer. Like, if you're only doing school right now, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but like, you have more time. You can get a job or volunteer and like get some more experience that way. That's going to be really, really helpful on your resume. Like, you know, if I have somebody in my hand who, you know, just has done school, like never worked in this field, I'm going to want this person who's had some work experience. Like, that's just the truth. So yeah, I can't say exactly what skills, but you probably have a good idea. Someone wants to know if there are PhD programs for design. The answer is yes. The answer is you'll have to Google. Like, I don't know all of them off the top of my head. Does getting a PhD degree help in fetching a green card? I mean, again, I'm not an international student, but I do know that typically yes, right? Like, the more specialized you are, the more likely you are to get those visas and things. But I can't speak to that on specifics. Someone asks, what were the most important variables for you in balancing growing your personal life while also pursuing a full-time PhD? So yeah, I started my PhD. You want to hear this story? This is a fun story. So we were living in North Carolina, and then we got married in Michigan because I'm from Michigan. And then we moved back to North Carolina, packed up all our shit, both quit our jobs and then moved up to New York for me to start my PhD, even when my husband, my now like 1-week-old husband, didn't have any job lined up. So that was stressful. Like, I get it. I get all of like the juggles and the weird mental math you're doing. For me, in terms of like balancing it, it was really good to have that person who was not in academia, because they like pulled me out. They like made me do other things to keep me healthy, like, you know, mentally, physically, like it's really important. And then, yeah, I didn't think I was going to have a kid during my PhD because that's crazy. But then I did. So I had my first kid, I think like at the end of year 2. Yeah. And then made that work too. It's one of those things. It's like, if you say it out loud, it sounds crazy, but if you're just doing it, like, you know, who's to tell like the penguin they can't fly, right? Like, just let me fly, damn it. I don't have any answers though, right? Like, every person is different, and like what's important to you might not be important to me, and vice versa. So it's just like, yeah, thinking about what you like, you and you know what you want to do in 5 years or 10 years, and like, what does it take to get there? And then like, are you willing to do that? Like, if I want to run a marathon, but like I never want to get up and like go training, like I'm never going to run that marathon. And like, will I be sad in 10 years, or like, will I be fine with it? Like, those are the kind of questions, like, because, you know, there's like, training every day is not fun, right? Like, we all know that. But if I really want to run that marathon, like, I'm going to train, or I'm not. Like, you don't get a gold star for running a marathon, right? You don't get a gold star for doing your PhD. It's a thing that you have to want to do and you see the value in. Otherwise, like, do something else, right? Sorry, that was a rabbit hole. What kinds of internships or associateships will stand out for a PhD application for both the neuroscience and law? You're a badass. Neuroscience and law. You know the field. Like, whatever you think is best. Something is better than nothing, right? Like, so start with that. Like, if you've got 0 offers, get 1 offer, get 1 internship, right? And then, so maybe you get 4 offers on the table. Then you get to decide, you know, what's more prestigious or whatnot. But I would say, let's just start somewhere. Neuroscience, law, I mean, you can't go wrong, right? If you're in either of those spaces, like, you're not just going to be like pressing buttons. Like, both of those are good spaces. I don't think academia, and, you know, certain fields, like, I know I worked with somebody who had done internships at the UN, or like, there are certain things like buzzwords that are going to like light people up, but I didn't have any of that. I worked at a shitty entry, like, regional engineering firm. Like, literally nobody had ever heard of it because it only existed in like this like little tiny small town. Like, so it's fine. But like, I had experience that was transferable, which is just like my basic entry level tasks or things that I did that could be applied to, you know, research in my area, in my field. So I don't think we have to set the bar. Like, I mean, the more the better. Like, I'm not going to tell you to like just like phone it in, but yeah, you know your space. You know what you want to do. Okay, cool, guys. I think I got through all the questions. Does anybody have more questions? I'm here. We've got another 9 minutes if you want. Oh, I see one. Beth. Oop. Hold on. I'm going to go to Maruk. And please correct me if I am saying your name wrong. Hello.
Yes, you said it right. My name's Maharak, and I'm currently a student at NYU. I'm doing my master's in MSc Global Affairs with a concentration in peace building. I am trying to explore the space of peace tech, and I want to sort of go towards a PhD in that direction.
Cool.
Right now, all these things that I'm saying to you do sound like buzzwords to me with a potential of transferring into something more. But I'm in my second year of my master's program, and I have a very busy life in the sense that I have a writing program that I sort of like just publish blogs for. But apart from that, I intern at a place which basically is not really an internship. It's more like actual work, and it's sort of a startup that works in my area. But I do that and whatever. So I do fill in some sense of the criteria that might otherwise be relevant for a PhD. But I guess my question comes from a place more of I don't know where to start and how to start. Like I know that I want to do a PhD, and I also know that the necessary steps that you have to apply to a program and sort of reach out to the department. But I guess my question's more nuanced in the sense that where does one sort of start the process of identifying that a program or a particular department is very relevant to them, and sort of, as you said, that you reach out to people before and the faculty before, and I get that, but how does one even contact faculty with many people previously in questions expressed with that sense of self-doubt and with that sense of, that am I even going to get a response? And I'm interested in this program. I potentially have enough publications. I don't, whatever. But all of that, you basically get the gist of it. But I'm sort of more at the space of like where to start with and how.
Yeah. Yes, that's probably like a little deeper than we can get into, but that's exactly what I do in my program so well, because like I think a lot of people go astray is they like skip that step and they just go like, oh, I'll just apply to Stanford, or I'll just apply to like, MIT. And they just didn't do that foundation to set them up, and like it just shows. It's kind of the difference between like, having like a whole put together outfit versus like, okay, you just put on a shirt. Like yeah, you're technically dressed, like you did it, you submitted the application, but like it's not an outfit. Like it's not cohesive. But some thoughts to consider when you're thinking about like how to start. Brainstorm like a little bit with the end in mind. Like at the end with my PhD, what do I see myself doing? And then like what skills or what area or what knowledge did I amass to do that, right? So like, and then you can kind of figure out where that fits in certain departments and schools and things like that. But it's hard. Okay, here's another thing though. It's going to change. Like wherever you see yourself in 4 years, like once you start actually doing the things, you're going to learn so much more. Doors are going to open for you. Like that whole view is going to shift. But I think it's worth aiming, because if you don't aim, you end up like all over the map, right? And so I think it also just constrains us a little bit to be like, okay, this is the thing that I'm targeting today, with the thought that it's going to change, but like this is the best information I have today, and like this is what I see being useful for me. There's that. And then from the networking side, again, that's what I do. Like help my people network. We have to deep dive. You know how it is. Like you stalk someone on the internet, you get all your ducks in a row, and then you craft an email that is not 3 pages long. Like we don't want to like go on and like, we hit them where we need to, and then we follow up, and then we schedule a Zoom call, and then we just kind of keep doing that process and getting better and better. So just hit send, I guess, is also a thing of like, if you never hit send, you're never going to get a response. So I think that that's also really critical.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I know it was a lot, but you asked a very deep question, which was very, very valid. I don't even know. Oh, great. Okay. I'll put we talked about the Fearless Grad Program a little bit in here. It's how I help people get into PhD programs with full funding and just while having a life. Like, I think it's also really critical that you feel good through this process. Like, I know a lot of people have this assumption that they have to feel stressed and burnt out and insanely overdone through this process. And like, that's not my philosophy. So I'll put the link in here. You can book a call. You can see if this is a good fit for you and what you want to do to accomplish your goals. Me and my team, we can chat with you and see if it's a good fit. It's really, really awesome, really great to just give yourself that push and also like up level all of your application materials. So you're putting your best foot forward because, you know, you want to love where you go because you're going to be there for 4 years. And so you also want, you know, to work with somebody who gets it. And then they can speak to all the different things going through your head. And that way you're not stuck. Because I also know I've talked to enough people that there are a lot of people who have every intention of applying, but so many things happen and they don't, right? So we also want to make sure that you get to the finish line and that you feel like you gave it everything you can, right? We can't guarantee any outcome. That's not a thing, but we can guarantee that you're going to have run the best race. And like at the end, you're going to feel really good about what you do. And my people are really successful. Our success rate is like 4 times the national average. So there's that too. But it's really more about you creating your vision and your dream, and then we help you do that. Any other questions? Okay, someone says she wants to know more about my team. Let me find my website. Hold on, peeps. Yeah. And so like the people that I worked with, they're diverse. Like I'm not only working with like people with 4.0s. I'm working with people who are older, people who were straight out of undergrad, people who are international, like lots of different kinds of people. And so I think that that's in from all different fields too, like literature, engineering, psychology, right? Like, because the process is the same. The process is determining what you want to do, what's marketable, what about you is marketable, having you network and connect with faculty, and then writing. Then we have to write good materials, right? So all of that is the same, no matter if you're applying to art history or electrical engineering, right? It's very, very similar. Oh yeah, so I put my link in there about my team. It's me and then the people that I worked with a few cycles ago, and they are currently in PhD programs, which I also think is really cool because they're like closer to the ground and they continue to, you know, keep everything fresh. And they're also really good writers. So that's a really good, important thing. Cool. All right, guys, I'm going to log off. And then if you want to book a call, join the program, ask me any questions about that. I'm happy to chat with you and we'll just work together hopefully soon. And all right, well, y'all have a wonderful evening. See you. Bye, guys.